Crazy how it's already been 2 weeks since I showed off the Fear and City environment. I guess time flies when you're having fun. This past fortnight, I've smashed out a development timeline to take us to launch, an in-game cutscene featuring some juicy lore, new player animations, and some procedurally generated content. Let's check it out. The most important thing I've created is this task sheet. It lists out all of the major features that are left to go into the game. It's pretty motivating seeing them all laid out like this. From this task sheet, I've generated a production timeline with estimates for how long each of these tasks will take, and a target launch date for Blackheart. Of course, there are always a million tiny little details that you stumble across along the way, but so long as each milestone every week is being met, then we should stay on track for launch next year. Speaking of milestones, my milestone this week was to implement an important cutscene near the end of Act 2, where the player witnesses an interaction between Abigail and the big bad guy, Tyronus. Tyronus, he who moves oceans, is the one orchestrating the whole attack on Fira, but seems to have plans involving Abigail. This cutscene has quite a lot of dialogue, but it explains some major plot points, so I think it will stay. The intention is that the players will be invested enough in the characters at this point to want to know what's going on. You can see that some of the artwork is incomplete. I create placeholder art to quickly test out ideas and see if they work. Sean turns them into full assets later. In this case, the original location of the cutscene made no sense. I had to change details such as the positioning of the characters, and if we hadn't prototyped it out first to check that everything worked, we could have wasted a lot of time. My goal here is not to create breathtaking artwork, but actually quite the opposite, to create something as quickly and dirtily as I possibly can to get the job done. The artists will come in later and make the visuals sing. Now all that's left for this cutscene is the implementation of the character models and an art pass on the VFX. Nice! The way we animate characters in Blackheart is not how you might expect. Our team was limited in that nobody knew how to animate in 2D, so we had to come up with an alternate solution. Learning 3D. If you've never worked in animation before, this might seem a bit counterintuitive, but in many ways, 3D animation is actually easier than 2D. For a start, the computer has a lot more information to work with. A 3D model has all the information for what the character looks like from every angle, so you don't need to try and figure out things like perspective or consistency. Another pro is that if you want to change something about the animation or the character, it's super easy. You just make the change to the model and update the animation. In traditional 2D, if you wanted to change something about a character, say the shape of their hat, you'd have to redraw every single frame of every animation involving that character, which as you can imagine is a massive time sink. My animator David tidied up some of the player character animations, and here I am implementing them into the game engine. It looks really whack because the player character actually has 2 separate animators that control the top and bottom halves of the body. It's my Kiwi DIY way of doing animation layering with 2D sprites. It's a bit jank, but with some code to act as superglue, it actually works. Thankfully, the player character is the only one who's this complicated. And the complication pays off, because it feels a lot more responsive than it would otherwise. Since I got the cinematic done so quickly, I wanted to get a head start on the Lighthouse Gauntlet. This is a special section leading up to the Tyronus boss fight, where you will have to proceed up a lighthouse, fighting waves of enemies on each floor. I wanted to give it an element of randomness so that it can be reused as an infinite challenge in the endgame. Procedurally generating combat encounters isn't actually too hard due to how everything has been set up. I want the player to be able to decide how difficult they want each fight to be and give them greater rewards if they challenge themselves. Each floor of the lighthouse, the generator will randomly choose which obstacles to place on the floor, as well as which enemies to place and when to spawn them. More powerful enemies will be less common than weaker ones, ensuring that fights don't become overwhelmingly hard or boring and easy. I hope you've enjoyed this quick recap of the past 2 weeks of Blackheart development. I'll be taking Christmas and New Year's off, so the next video will come out early next year. If you want to see that one, be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for all your support.